This is the story of a bhakt yogi or a bhakt or a bhakti yogi, and essentially a scientist. So he was a bhakti scientist, really, Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans. And the reason I call him a scientist is because he experimented with this quite a bit, and that's what we learned from him. So, for example, his first sort of attachment or attraction was with Kali Devi when he was at Dakshineshwar temple in Calcutta. So he achieved samadhi and her darshan. So that itself is a very fascinating story. So he had done lots of tapasya uh, for seeing, having her vision. So he had that desire that I will have the vision of Ma Kali, and for that he had done everything, but the vision was not coming. So one day he said, I have given everything to you. Why are you not giving me a vision? And then one day he realized, no, I haven't given everything. I haven't given my body. So he went in front of the deity at the temple. The sword that she was carrying, he put his neck under the sword and was just about to cut it. He said, my one, and that's exactly when he had the darshan. He was ready to give up his body, his life, and that's when the darshan happened. So this was his first experience of the darshan. And then his journey continued. He didn't stop there. As I said, he was a scientist. So that was with Ma Kali. Then there was he experimented with different objects and methods for the same realization. So there was a monk named Jatadhari who came. He was a devotee of Ram Lalla, the child form of Ram. He came to Dakshineshwar temple and he couldn't go from there because he was Jatadhari was very devoted to Ram Lalla. But he couldn't go from there because he said Ram Lalla is not going from here. Ram Lalla likes Ram Krishan ji a lot. And I think during then he ended up staying for a few months. And Ram Krishan ji had again Sakshatkar of Ram Lalla, a child in the child form. And Jatadhari ji realized Ram Lalla is so attached. He said, I will leave Ram Lalla here and go. So then Ram Lalla stayed with Ram Krishan ji till the end. Till his end. So he was there in the same temple. That's how Ram Lalla ji also he got an Sakshatkar. Post that, there was another monk who visited called Totapuri, and he felt Sri Ramakrishna ji will be good for Vedant. So he taught him Vedanta, the Nirgun side, the Advait philosophy, and he experienced, I think, through that process, through a series of meditations again, the formless God, the Nirgun Samadhi, which is very rare, but that's where he experienced that as well. So seeing the sequence, and I think once that happened, he got even, you can say, more probably curious or experimental in some sense. So then there was a Sufi saint who visited. He learned from him the process of the Islamic process for realization, and then he basically read the namaz, called out Allah's name, did all of that, and according to him, he then had a vision of a person in a beard, which could be prophet because we don't know how the prophet looked, but that was his understanding that he did have a vision of the prophet with that. So he experimented, or he for those days or that period when he did this, he adopted Islam in its totality. So he would do the namaz as prescribed. So he used the exact method that was prescribed from there. Subsequently, I think he had another visitor who was a Christian, and that also piqued his curiosity. So then he took a picture of Mother Mary and the child, and I think meditated on that for significant periods of time, used that methodology, and again had the vision of Christ. So through this different experiments, he basically said each religion, at least whatever he saw, and in the different Hindu side, if you see, there is Devi, then Ram Lalla, and then the Nirgun as well. He realized the same experience of God, and I think through this he propagated then throughout his lifetime this notion of harmony of religions, or that all religions are similar in the goal, even across religions. And then he sort of talked about a universal religion, which is what Swami Vivekananda ji then introduced to the world and took that message. In fact, the introduction of Swami Vivekananda ji and Ramakrishna ji is also quite fascinating. So Swami Vivekananda ji used to meditate from childhood, knew all the scriptures, and he had the knowledge as a young adult, and but he was not satisfied. So he used to go around meeting a lot of these saints who were across India, and he would ask only one question: that have you seen God? And most of the places, everywhere he went, first he got an answer as no, and then he just left. He said, "Have you seen God? Yes or no?" No. He used to just leave. And in that around those times, then he met Ramakrishna ji, and he asked, "Have you seen God?" And he said, "Yes, of course. And I see him and experience him just like I experience you." And that's how their relationship started, which culminated in him transferring at the time of his passing his entire knowledge or his energy to Swami Vivekananda ji, stayed with Vivekananda ji even after. And as I said, that's what led him to the West, and what we know of yoga today in the modern way sort of began with that. So yeah, that's the story of Ramakrishna ji. Now from this, as I talked of the universal religion, that's what I think we also look at, and that's what we feel is the key. So there are certain principles that got articulated. This is from a research paper by a Swamiji from Advait Ashram, from the school that was set up by Vivekananda ji or the Ramakrishna Mutt. So there are 5 principles, they said, that we should look at. And when we look at bhakti or worship or any religion, we believe in that, and that's what we will keep through this course, and at least at the Swast Yoga Institute and Swast we follow that. So the 5 principles are: the first is that the ultimate reality is only one, but it is known by different names in different religions. It is personal as well as impersonal. So again, this text is quoted from that research paper. So just wanted to highlight that, and that paper is available if people want for further reading. So the ultimate reality is only one. It is personal as well as impersonal, and we will talk about this a little more. Realization of the ultimate reality is the true goal and purpose of human life. That's what every religion says. It is also the central purpose of all religions. It is the direct transcendental experience that gives validity to religions, and not books. So all religions are based on this experience. There are several paths to the realization of the ultimate reality. Each religion is such a path. Yata mat tata path. That's the Bengali for as many faiths, so many paths. As paths to the same ultimate goal, all world religions are valid and true. But each person should remain steadfast in his own path, in a spirit of nishtha, without thinking that his path alone is true and perfect. Other paths are true and perfect too. And lastly, furthermore, one should show respect to the founders of all religions as special manifestations of God, and knowing that God dwells in all people, one should serve all without any distinction of caste, creed, race, etc. Yeah. So all religions are valid. Their goal is the same, which is this realization, this experience. So the goal is not knowing God in the sense of knowing about him theoretically, but in the experience of it. That's where we are headed. There are different paths, all are valid, and not to the exclusion of others. So I think that's the important, that links with Swamiji's initial comment that we don't mistake, don't hate the other. We love, but we stay true to our path. And that's the summary. This they have done, I think Ramakrishna again very beautifully as we visit their temples. You actually find this. The top right that you see, that's the picture from I think the Mumbai one, where we have visited quite often in Bandra. The wall paintings on the top that you see, these are all different religions, their pictures, their stories, just like it's here in the big one, where they're talking of their founders and their learnings. Amazing literature also they have on all religions. We have tried our small part of creating this at the Yoga Institute as well through this. Yeah, I think some Anand has visited, so he's probably nodding. But yeah, we've tried to create that in a little way there as well. So this is what for us religion, bhakti, the theme will be. with these principles. So yeah, taking it forward from there, this is sort of the background of bhakti yoga, on what we are laying this foundation on, because I think that's very important as we step into this space of bhakti. Okay, so here again, before, just to get one definition from Swami Vivekananda ji from his book, he says bhakti is a series or succession, yeah, series or succession of mental efforts at religious realization, beginning with ordinary worship and ending in a supreme intensity of love for Ishwar. We'll slowly unpeel this definition step by step, because there are these 4 elements in it, and that's how we will take it forward in just seeing how the 4 elements play out. Okay. So before, as we start doing that, the first element, right, what is the key of bhakti, is that it's what is common to all spiritual systems and religions. Right? This is something we've already come across in this, and to me that's love, right? The theme of love. So I'll start with Kabir, which is a spiritual system. It's become a religion also. Unfortunately, there are now 10 million Kabir Panthis. He fought his life against all religions, and then people have made him or his teachings also religion, right? So what did he say? He said, "Pothi padi padi jag muha, pandit bhava na koi, dhai aakhar prem ke, padhe so pandit hoy." So Pothi means book. So people have read books, gone away, but nobody has become a pandit. Nobody is a scholar. Dhai aakhar, only the 2.5 syllables of the word prem. Whoever understands that, that person is a pandit, is really who has realized something. Rumi, love is the house of God and you are living in that house. So Sufi saying, Dalai Lama, he says, the more you are motivated by love, the more fearless and free your actions will be. Christ, Jesus Christ, love your enemies. That was one of his key statements, and very controversial, because if he says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. So you love your enemies. Love is the remedy. The Quran, whoever loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet him. And this is there in the Gita as well, that we love Ishwar, we love Allah, we love God, we want the divine, but divine also wants us. There is a lot of love that divine has for his or her creation as well. So it's mutual. Buddha, radiate boundless love towards the entire world. So again, love is a remedy. And Raman Maharishi, who is known as a Gyan Yogi, so he says the end of all wisdom is love. So love has a very clearly, very critical role in worship, in bhakti.